Hi everybody, we'll just give it another minute or two. We're a little bit early. Okay. So we'll just give it another couple of minutes. I'll just let a couple of other people pick up and then we will kick off. Thanks very much to everyone that hit the 2 o'clock still. Right, okay, let's get going. That's great. Sure everyone else can jump on as and when. Won't be too far behind. So, right, first of all, thanks everyone for joining. Just to be clear, I'm sure there's no confusion, but this is the simplifying SAP label printing with Loftware Cloud webinar. A little bit of housekeeping. Everyone will be on mute. So if you've got any questions, I believe we can just put those in the chat. Between myself and Brett, we'll pick those up either as we run through or at the end of the session. Also, we will obviously be releasing and sharing a recording of the session as well. So if there's anything you missed out, any of the questions that come on, or you want to share it internally or with any other colleagues, we'll have that available for you all to look at anytime. There we go. It's great. So just do a little bit of an introduction to make sure everyone knows who we are and what we do and how we all sit together and how we connect with Loftware and SAP. So a little bit of background. My name is Nigel Holloway. I'm one of the partners at Barcode-IT. Barcode-IT, also known as Dash Computer Products. So 2 companies, but we're under the same umbrella. So if you hear either, it's the same people. We're joined today by a good friend of ours, Brett Mallon from Athena. I'll just run through a little bit of background on our company and where we sit, and then Brett can tell you a little bit more about Athena and the good things they're doing. We've been going now, I think it's our 36th year in existence, very much positioned in the auto ID industry, barcode-driven solutions, mobility solutions, obviously label printing, managed service, a lot of project-driven work, obviously a lot in the SAP arena, which is why we're good friends with the guys at Athena and Brett. We've been doing it for a long time. We've been partners with Loftware, who used to be known as Nice Label. So just in case, again, you hear either reference, Nice Label, Loftware, the same company, for well over 25 years. So we're very well versed in the product. We're an integrator partner with Loftware, which means it's basically the highest tier possible and allows us to work with people like Brett to deliver these kinds of solutions. But we've been doing this a long time and we're very embedded in this ecosystem and delivering a full wrap solution. So hence we work with partners and colleagues like software providers, like the consultants, etc. I'll hand over to Brett. He can tell you a little bit about Athena.
Thanks, Nigel. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Brett Malin. I am one of the directors and founders of Athena Supply Chain Solutions. We have not been going for as long as Barcode-IT. We've only started up beginning of last year, so we've been going relatively short time. However, personally, I have got 29 years of SAP experience, mostly around as a SAP developer, but I've done a lot of functional work as well. Where I'm coming from with this webinar is around the whole developer side, because label printing is definitely falls within the developer domain. So it's something I've worked on many projects, and something you see that is brought up at the very last minute of a project and normally causes many headaches for the project managers and the project teams.
Yeah. Sorry, Brett. Yeah, I would just So just to give a little bit of context to the call, and Brett is fantastic to have for this. As Brett touched on there, we found over the years, and it's not exclusive to SAP, but certainly becomes a much bigger consideration, that the legacy way of producing, designing, printing, altering, mainly barcode labels, but all kinds of labels, is a real challenge. And it's, without taking up too much of Brett's thunder on this, it's bloated, it's unnecessary, it's complex. So when we started to work with Athena using Loftware's SAP solution, which, by the way, last week was accredited as a SAP, what's the highest level of app? It's an endorsed app. SAP endorsed. Thank you, endorsed app. So it's fully compliant now at the top level. Brett was really keen and a lot of hunger to embrace this solution, as he saw a lot of wins. Not only wins at the start of the project, as Brett mentioned, because barcode labels always get ignored, always, until you literally stood there either doing UAT or about to go live, and someone goes, well, hang on a minute, we haven't got any handling unit labels, or we haven't got any location labels, etc. But also business as usual. We know that businesses, as they run, things change, things alter, requirements can alter, whether they're external requirements or internal operational changes. And the necessity to go to the business, we need a new barcode label for this, or we need to change the label for that. Previously, people like Brett have had to do a lot of shovel work to make that happen. But we hope with Loftware's product, because it is a product, that requires a skill set of us and people like Athena to bring it together. It's a much more straightforward solution. So what we're going to do is basically, Brett's definitely the brains behind this and has the knowledge to add a lot of context to this. So Brett's going to run through essentially a presentation and a demonstration about why we think this is so good, what the pros are, etc. And by all means, like I say, any questions, any queries, please just jump into the chat. We'll try and pick them up as and when, or we'll pick them up at the end. But hopefully we'll cover everything. It'll be a really useful session. So again, I hand over to the man who knows everything, Brett.
I'll just go into a little bit about Athena as well quickly before I start off with the demo. So from Athena, we're a small consultancy. So we specialize in SAP logistics, mainly across the SAP IM, WM, EWM, and TM areas in ECC and S4HANA. And our main focus is around the governance, technical design, business side consulting, and operational excellence. So we always pride ourselves in supplying solutions that add value to users and support the future growth for your business. So the customer is always coming first. We are also a Loftware technology partner. So we've gone through the Loftware certifications. So what I will do is I will now jump into the small presentation I've put up, and we can go through to get through to the demo. Just share my screen here. Hopefully you can see the slide.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. So what I will do is first of all go through a little bit of background for Loftware. So the setting up of Loftware itself, Loftware Cloud, is a very simple process. I've been through this myself. So effectively, what you do is once you've signed up to Loftware, you will get a link to the Loftware Control Center. From there, you start setting up your accounts, your users, and then you then set up as a Loftware into the Loftware Center Control Center. Then you start setting up your integration. Now, the Loftware ABAP package is an additional package that's delivered from Loftware. That will be provided to you. I think there is a cost involved to that, but as Nigel said, he's involved in the selling side. I'm not involved in the selling side. I'm just on the technology side. So this Loftware ABAP package contains transport files, configuration file, and various documentation such as implementation guide and some sample label files. So once you've then imported those transports into your system, you can then start connecting up your SAP system to Loftware. Now, this can either be done via a web service or via RFCs, where you can go via the Loftware Cloud connector. Then you can then download your desktop applications from your Loftware Control Center. One of them, which is the most important one, is the automation bit of software, and you need to have the automation service running on your computers where your printers are attached to, because this then allows you to then see all your printers from the Loftware Control Center. And then once you've connected up SAP to your Loftware system, you can then configure your Loftware settings on your SAP side, and then you can start running a test. And the setup process is quite simple. I think when I did it, I probably had it up and running within a day, and it was all connected and quite easy to work with. Then with regards to the SAP side of things, so the whole beauty of working with Loftware and SAP is in the past, everything that you wanted to do with outputs was all generally down to your developer team. So the developer team would get involved. They would write either your print programs, or if you're working with EWM, you'd have your PPF action definitions. And the developer team would write those. They would then also start building your labels, either using SAP scripts, Smart Forms, or Adobe Forms. So all of this work then sits with your developer team. Your developer team within a project or on a BAU are generally snowed under. They are your resource that is very limited. So your label changes, your label development tends to take weeks, maybe months sometimes, just to get a label change or a new label created. The advantage with doing Loftware is what you could do is you have your developers create your print programs, your custom PPF action definitions. They build them in such a generic way that all the information that you may need from an object, such as your delivery or such as your handling unit, if you're working with handling units, is all sent out in a user-readable format, user-readable variables, and then they're exposed to Loftware itself. You can then actually take your whole label creation and your label changes can then be taken away from your SAP development team and can actually sit in the realms of the business users. So your business users, anyone who's trained up on Loftware, it could be even a marketing department, could then be involved in creating your labels. So you're therefore separating your actual physical label creation versus your data retrieval into two different teams. The advantage of that is if you need to make any changes to that, so say, for example, you want to change your barcode symbology, you want to change your logo and your label, that then does not need to be done by a SAP development team anymore. That can actually be done by someone within the business and can be turned around if you have workflow or non-workflow, can be turned around in minutes or maybe a day if you have to have workflow approvals going via marketing departments. Another advantage of using Loftware is it's not only restricted to SAP. So you can print your labels from SAP. You can have your handling unit label format, for example. But say, for example, you have third-party providers who you want to provide you with handling unit labels of your exact format. What you can do is actually create a web application within Loftware Cloud, share this with your suppliers. When they go and produce their handling units, they will then use this web application, put all the information in, generates a handling unit label for them, they stick it on, you can then receive that into your system. You can also tie this into PLCs, for example. So at the end of a line, you can trigger a handling unit label. It's all using the same template because it's all going to Loftware Cloud. You can tie it into MES. There are unlimited uses of Loftware for label printing. So what I will do is I will jump into the demo. Just before I jump into the demo, what I've put in place already on the SAP EWM side of things is I've created a custom PPF action definition. Now, anyone who hasn't used EWM won't necessarily be familiar with the PPF framework, but it's very much similar to the output processing in ECC, the NACE application, where you create an output type, you link a print program to that, and then you go ahead and you print from there. So I've created a custom PPF action definition, a custom PPF schedule condition, and I've also written the code in the PPF action definition to retrieve the handling unit information or your pallet information. And then I've also configured Loftware to then say for the specific PPF action definition or this PPF, I want to go and print the specific label template, which I'll show you now, which is what I'm going to create. So what I will do now, hang on, just and jump in. So I will now, go and create a label from scratch. Please bear with me. It's a live demo, so generally things do tend to go wrong in live demos. But I will try my best to get it done and dusted for you, just to show you how easy it is to create a new label.
Shows you how confident you are, Brett, in the whole thing. You're willing to do it live. I love it.
We will see. So this is the Loftware Designer that you receive when you work with Loftware. So this is the desktop app. You can also have a cloud version, which runs from your control center. So you come along to go and create a new label. So you just create your label. Decide which printer you're using. In this case, I'm using a Zebra ZD421. You can then say what your label format is. So in my case, I'm using a roll of labels. So I can just select that option. And in my instance, I want to create a portrait label. So I select portrait. And then over here, I come and enter my label dimensions, which are 102 by 152. So we've now defined our label profile. This is exactly what our label is going to look like. So what I now do, because I've already created all the data extractor from the EWM system, I know the names of my variables. So I'm going to go and start adding my variables into this label. So I go along and just start creating them. So I know I've got a batch, so some basic information that we're going to have in the label that I know that I'm going to get out of EWM. It's just a few variables that we're going to have on every single label that I just want to put placeholders in. And I can place them and start building my label. And yeah. Okay, so that's all the information I'm pulling in from SAP at this point in time. Now, when the actual print program is created, what you could do is if you have, say, for example, 100 different variables available for, say, for example, a delivery, you could create your print program to send out all those variables. But when we are creating our label, we may use a subset of that information. The whole beauty of the automation module within Loftware is that it'll then map that information into our label and only use what we need. So now this is my information I've got here. Now what I want to do is also I want to create some functions. Now when we get for example, one of the examples is the expiry date. When you send a date in its native format from SAP, you get it in the format of century, year, month, and day. Now, when you're putting that information into a barcode, for example, if you're doing a GS1 label, you only need year, month, day. So we need to then strip that data down. You may also want to output that date in a user-readable format as day, month, year. So we can then format that data within Loftware itself, within the label itself. And to do that, we use what we call functions. So in this case, I'm going to create a few functions that I'm going to use in my label, and I'll just show you quick how easy it is. So where I mentioned where we want to use a date, we want to strip off the century year, for example. So we'll go ahead and create a subset. Date. Function. And now what we can do is, because we've already got our expiry date information coming from SAP, we want to exclude the first 2 characters and we want to use the next 6. So then we've created a new function. In the same way, I want to go ahead and I want to create a formatted date to output a new user-readable format. So what I can use is actually I can use a Python script to do this.
Right, just very briefly, sorry, from my understanding.
Yeah.
The date function that you added there, if you previously had to do that inside of SAP, how would that would have worked?
Well,
if you didn't have Loftware?
No, within SAP, what you can do is date is a very special data element within the system. So you would be able to then format the date in a SAP script or anything like that. I could also, when I'm writing the print program, is I could output that date in a formatted date format. So I could put it as day, month, year in a separate field, and I could write it that way. But what it does is then it restricts you to using that one specific date format that you've output in your program. Whereas in this case, we're putting out the raw dates field, and then within the label itself, we can then use Python scripts or any of the formatting options available to put that date into the format we want on the label.
Brilliant. Thanks.
And in this case as well, Nigel, I'm putting out one piece of information, my expiry date from SAP, but I'm changing into two different formats within the label using the functions within Loftware itself. So minimizing the transfer.
Cool, thanks.
Worries? So I'm just showing you some of these functions just to show you the flexibility of what is available in Loftware, so how you can manipulate the data that you're getting. Another one of the functions I want to use is a concatenate function. Now, normally when you are putting a quantity or a weight or some sort of unit of measure, you always want to put out the value together with the unit of measure. So we can output that in a nice little way by concatenating those 2 bits of information together. So here I can say, for example, quantity. And you can just add my data sources. So when I add quantity, unit of measure, and put a space between it. I can do the same for my weight. Okay, so I now have all the variables that I want to use, so I can go ahead and start creating my label. So over here, I want to start off with an image. So over here, I want to put the Loftware logo, for example, in the top corner. Put my logo in there. I can resize it as I want. And then I can start adding my data. So what I will normally end up doing is, first of all, starting with fixed data. So you would have your, for example, your description. So in this case, I want to put my material information. I want to format it to bold. And then over here, because I've defined a variable, I can just drag my variable across to the label and just line it up, start building up my label that way. Then what I want to do is add my material description. So I'm using an element called the text box. The reason I'm using this is because in SAP, your material description can be anywhere from 1 character up to 35 characters, and that could have an implication on the different sizing within the label. So what we can do is use this text box element for Loftware, and we can then say, okay, I want to put my material description in here, and I want to make the text fit to the box size, and I want to specify a minimum text size and a maximum font size that I want to use. So my label will, my description can change. If I wanted to just be a fixed description, you don't have to use a specific functionality. So then if I carry on adding information, I add my quantity on here. And now in this case, I want to bring one of my functions. So I don't want to use my quantity and then add my unit of measure. I've created my function where I'm combining my quantity and unit of measure. So you can see I just drag that again onto the label. So slowly building up the label, and then you've got all the lines there, so you can line everything up nice and neatly for yourself. If I then add the batch on, sure everything lines up, drag my batch across. Then expiry date. And this is where I've used another function. So I've actually got a formatted date, so I can put my formatted date to my label. Okay, now what I wanted to add next is a barcode. So all I do is I collect the barcode element, add it onto my screen, and you can see it places on the screen. So I might want to make it slightly smaller. Now what I want to do is I actually want to make a GS1 barcode. So the way I do that is I click on the barcode over here on the right hand side. I select my barcode symbology and I go down to GS1, 1 to 8. What you can see when I've done this, I get all these warnings over here, and on the left hand side under the functions, I've got a new GS1 1 to 8 function added in. The reason for this is you now have got to then say what data is going to form that GS1 barcode together with the application identifiers. So I just give it a name. And then over here, when I go into the GS1, I can edit its functions. I can then go and add. And here you can see all the available application identifiers according to the GS1 standard. So in this case, I want to go add in a palette ID, my SSCC. And I also want to put in my quantity, which is 37. And you can see I just select my data source and put my quantity in. And then you can see now my barcode's there. You can see I've got human readable text below this, of which I can resize if I want to make it larger. And then I can move it around as I want on the screen. Then I want to add a second barcode over here. Now that I'm going to add another GS1 barcode in this case. So again, as I go and add it in here, you'll see it's going to create a new function on the side here. I just go and build that up with what data I'm putting on there. In this case, I want to add my EAN code. Add my expiration date. And this is where I've had to format my data so it's valid for the barcode. And then also want to add my batch. It's as simple as that to just add a barcode onto the label. And then it's all GS1 formatted and everything like that for us.
Just very briefly, Brett, about this, because I came across this about 10 years ago on a project, we did an SAP project.
Yep.
When it comes to constructing a barcode, whether it's GS1, whether it's a 1D, 2D, whatever it may be, doing it the legacy way, so inside of SAP, either with SAP script or whatever it is, what's the controls to make sure you get this right? So obviously in Loftware, there's a lot of built-in structure in terms of you need to provide very specific information from the application identifiers as rules, as formats. How was that in the old way of doing it or the previous way of doing it?
There's the standard application identifiers, but normally when you build the data, you would have to build your human readable and your barcode information as different character strings, because within the human readable you have your brackets and things around your for example your 00 application identifier. You would have to build that into your character string that you output into the smart form or the SAP script or whatever technology you're using, and then you would also build a separate barcode string to put in your barcode. Now, also things like the FNC1 characters, if you have variable lengths within those GS1 barcodes, you have to remember to put those in a special character you have to add in. As part of what using Loftware, it builds all of that for you, but it also validates the data you're putting in there, which I'll show when I do the print preview.
Brilliant, thanks.
So my last bit of information, just put on the screen. Okay, so that's all the information we want on the label for now. So what we can then do is, before we save anything, we can go ahead and do a print preview. This will then give us an example. So you can see over here on the left-hand side, we've got all our different variables. On the right-hand side is our label. So as we put information in here, hit next, it starts building it in. So you can see the barcode starting to build and everything like that automatically. So you can have a real-time test. As you can see, the date formats in the SAP date format, and then it reformats everything as you need it. Handling unit ID. Now, this, because it's in a GS1 label, Loftware is actually going to validate it's a valid HUID. So if I, for example, put this value in here, hit enter, you can see I get an error straight away saying this is an invalid handling unit ID. It's an invalid SSC ID. So if I then put the correct value and hit enter, you'll see it starts building it in. So straight away, you can then see that Loftware is actually validating everything that's being put into the different barcodes, which is far superior to what you used to have in the old days, where you could just put any bit of data, and then when the scanner came to interpret it, it may then find an issue.
Sorry, Brett, I've got a quick question from Ravi in the chat. He just asked, these variables or fields that you're adding, can you follow the same process for any customized fields in SAP, e.g. customer specific text, etc.?
Yes, you can. These field names that I've done, you can see they're actually they're human readable names. Now, if you looked at them in the SAP system, for example, batch would be CHARG would be the field name. And if you then tend to use this in smart forms and SAP scripts, the developer has to know that that's the information. Because in this case, I've written a custom PPF action definition, and I've actually built the information that I'm sending out to Loftware. I've actually then taken the information, created these field names in the system, and then when it sends XML out to Loftware, this is the variables that we can then use in the label. So anybody who comes along, sees all this information, says, okay, these are all pre-decided, we're going to have this information available to us for this label format, and they can then go and use it that way.
Brilliant.
So as you can see there, that's all my data sitting there. So I can see straight away from here, I've got an error with this barcode. Because of the information that's in the barcode, this barcode's too long. So now we haven't saved anything, we've done nothing, we've printed nothing. So straight away we can come here and say, okay, I just need to make this barcode slightly smaller.
And that's really important as well. That step is very important because it's interpreting the resolution of the printer that's being used to ensure that the barcode that's printed is the correct XY dimension with the spacing, etc. Unlike a field in, say, crystal reports or whatever, where you can stretch it to any size or shape or anything like that, and then you start to distort the barcode and it becomes unreliable in that sense.
Yeah, that's great. So straight away, there we are. We can see we fixed it now, so we know we have confidence that this is going to work this way now in print. So that is our label. So what we would then do is we would go and save this. In this case, I'm saving it on my Loftware Cloud. Just give it a name. Okay, so that's my label. So now what I can do is actually, I now have a SAP system. So I've actually linked it up to this specific label name. And I can then try testing this label printout real time, and hopefully it works. So I go select my handling units. And I know a specific handling unit over here has got all the information I need. You can see my PPF action printed. And hopefully you can hear the label printing. It's actually printed off a label for me. What I'll do is I'll drop these labels into the chat afterwards as well, just to show you. So
Brilliant.
That has straight away done that. The only other thing I was going to say, now that we've saved this label and everything like that, say, for example, you come along and you say, okay, this is now live in production. The users, the warehouse operators come along and they give you feedback and say, actually, we've now have these two labels on the handling unit barcode, the handling unit label, these two barcodes on the label. What we're finding is when we're scanning, we tend to scan the bottom one, and that's not the information we want. So this is causing us problems. Now we need to go and change this label. Now, if you had to go via the SAP world, you could take weeks to do this because it has to go into the development system. The developers have to go change it. You have to test it, make sure it all works fine, move the transport into production. If you have a weekly transport window, that's already a week's delay behind. Now, if we decided, oh, we want to go quickly change this and say, okay, I want to just change this barcode symbology. I want to make it a 2D barcode, for example. I can come along here and say, okay, I just want to change this. I want to change this to data matrix, put it on here. I want to remove the human readable text because I don't, well, sorry. Hang on, remove the human readable text because we don't want that on there anymore. We can just do a print preview. Yeah, okay. And then we could actually do a print preview and then have, and then the label will be changed. And the change done by the business, that can be done by a business, doesn't have to be done by a SAP developer. And you can see it literally took a few minutes. Your label could then be live in production and that change could be done real time. You could then reformat the label if you wanted in any way, shape or form. And it's all done by the business. You don't have to touch SAP again. And that's the end of the demo.
Brilliant. There is also just, internally, as Brett mentioned, there is a separate approvals flow in Loftware itself if you still want to maintain that integrity from design, approve, go live, print, etc. So again, you can assign that to whoever in the business you need to if you still want to control it, but you're decoupling from that sometimes overworked and expensive resource in the business that is the SAP development team, as Brett mentioned. So really, yeah, I mean, it's just to give you a flavour there, compared to the standard SAP methodologies that we've been through and Brett's shown us in the past. It's so much easier and cleaner for everybody involved, for the business especially, and it also takes a workload and a data stream off the SAP team. I mean, if there's any other questions, if there's anything anyone wants to know, I think on the back of this, what we can do and what we do obviously, because there's a lot of things to try and cram into this short space of time. So if we're quite happy to split out afterwards, separate calls required to maybe go through this in a bit more detail, present it back to people within your business, really deep dive into some of the SAP side or the transport or whatever it may be. We're more than happy to go through that. Everything you've seen here, all the elements involved in terms of the configuration and the deliveries, we can either train your people, or we can do some of it, or we can do all of it, or we can do a progressive sort of mix. So, all those different ways of delivering this to the business, you can become completely self-sufficient, or we can get you up and running, and then you can do BAU. There's lots of different ways this can look and feel in terms of the business. We've got a couple of questions. What have we got?
Yeah, well, there's a question from Paul saying trigger from Fury, etc., from a handheld. Effectively, it's anywhere from SAP that you would trigger an output, or in EWM if you are triggering a PPF action. You could then link this to, instead of printing a label from SAP or an Adobe form or anything like that, you could then trigger the Loftware label printout. So it can be triggered from anywhere.
Yeah, and like Brett said before, the automation is a highly developed tool where you can get really clever. So you can have multiple triggers from different things, whether it's an IP address or we've even done it from weigh scales. We've had it from MES systems and SAP at the same time, and lots of different things all together. So you can be incredibly creative with the way in which you concatenate and trigger the label, print the data, etc. Obviously, everything's logged as well. So we've got a full traceability at the back end, what's happened and what's going on in that sense. Yeah, cheers, cool. It's great. It's really good. Brilliant. So if there's any other final questions, it really is quite an in-depth subject to try and cram into a short space, and Brett's done a brilliant job of highlighting, you know, the real benefits of Loftware. Loftware is a product as well, don't forget, so even though it's immensely configurable, it's basically you buy it off the shelf and then it's configured. So, you know, it's a really straightforward in that sense. It's constantly maintaining its security and features, and it's supported all the time, so there's nothing to worry about in that. And I think before this call, oh, we've got a quick question there from Paul. Right, so yeah, so it's a great question. Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So Loftware obviously work overwhelmingly through a reseller network. So the vast majority of occasions globally, if anyone goes to Loftware, they end up being directed to a partner to deliver it. Loftware in Europe, putting it frankly, don't have the headcount and the resource to start delivering end user projects and supporting those. So hence that's why for the past 25 years they've worked through a partner ecosystem, and they choose, you know, which partner it goes to. If you can contact them directly. We're obviously with Brett and the team, we're very focused on SAP and the skill set involved in that, and we've done loads of projects in the past. So you know, Loftware would support us in delivering that to you, and all the necessary skill sets. So for example, Loftware don't have access to our Brett, as it were, or someone who can help you with that part of it. So obviously the reseller network and community, we've got all the skill set, all the knowledge to string it all together and take the product and wire it into your SAP system so it does deliver on the shop floor, as opposed to sending you what used to be a floppy disk and saying, right, off you go, you boot it up and away you go. Could you see? Yes, thanks, Paul. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of customers can trigger, you know, inbound label prints on the receipt or whatever it may be. And again, this is part of looking at your business process, whether it's a mature one, whether it's a greenfield site, whatever it may be, and matching this. But as Brett's covered, it's really straightforward to change. So you say, well, let's try this and see what happens. And you can say, well, that works really well, great. Or actually, that's not going quite as we want because maybe the goods receipt process is a little bit fragmented. So let's change it to print the label here. And you can do that really rapidly. So it gives you incredible flexibility to respond to events on the shop floor in that sense. And obviously, we're all here in multiple layers, first line, second line, third line support to basically solve the issues. So we've had some people, for example, we've had a car manufacturer who said that they needed to have a special type of printer because they were printing a special kind of printer language. Not at all the case. Between us, we have the knowledge. It's not SAP specific, it's not printer specific, it's not Loftware specific, but between us, you have the knowledge to triage the issue and give you the cleanest, best solution as well. So that's part of the benefit of dealing with, you know, this reseller sort of ecosystem you've got, and you know, really use their experience. Great. I think everyone's happy then. That's fantastic. So 2:43, Brett, phenomenal. You saved it. There you go. You don't have 2 minutes to spare. Right, well, that's really good. Like I said, you know, before we leave, thanks very much for attending. Thank you so much, Brett, for that live demonstration. That's brave. I like it. That's really good. We'll issue out the video. We'll issue out the bits and pieces. Brett can take a picture of the label he printed as well and send that over. Yeah, and thanks ever so much. We'll share that. And like I say, if anyone wants to do a deeper dive, get some more information, or you have a specific labeling itch to scratch, anything like that, please get in touch with us. We're more than happy to arrange a call one-to-one with you and your team and really do some deep dive. Yeah, and as Jonathan said, some personalized demos if you've got some data of a specific business transaction. And that's great. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your interaction. Thanks ever so much. Cheers, Graham. Good to see you again. And we'll call that. That's great. Thanks ever so much. And we hope to see you again soon. Okay. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys. Cheerio. Bye.